for it.
How do you feel about trans men or trans men who used to be men who are now identifying as women in
The easy way is to remember, trans women, biological men, trans men, biological female.
cool, that one. How would you feel with them being in the same bathroom as you?
Trans women?
Yes. Would you care, not care?
Oh, yes, I would care.
Any
Yes.
particular reason why?
Because I think it's an infringement on the fundamental right that women have to their safety and their bodily autonomy. And I don't care whether a person has had surgery or not. A surgery cannot reverse the fact that there's a male pattern aggression that does not feature in females. And just because there are exceptional females who have higher levels of testosterone, which might approximate the lowest levels in some men, the outlier does not change the rule. Simple.
So if you had a trans woman come in who does not look like she was ever a man, would you feel safer or not so safe?
Basically, if you couldn't tell the difference,
Yeah.
would you feel more or less safe?
Well, I think it's obvious that you would feel more safe because we have a nature, we recognize certain sex characteristics, and that plays into instincts which are outside of our control. But the appearance is not the reality. And again, I don't blame any particular individual or say, oh, trans people are dangerous. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yep.
I'm just saying that I think that men and women should be allowed to have segregated spaces.
Beautiful.
I don't think that men are evil and that all men are violent. I don't think that trans people are uniquely evil or violent or anything. I just merely think that women are entitled to have segregated spaces.
So it's not because there's a huge influx of trans women attacking women. It's just because you want your personal space. You want to be able to feel like you're safe, especially in
and I want those trans individuals to also be safe. Completely. They are a vulnerable group who, in this sense, is marginalized because of difference, who are vulnerable to being attacked by people who don't like them. Do I know the rates on this? No. But do I feel compassion for that group, regardless to whether I agree with what they're doing? Of course I feel compassion for them. I would like if there was separate facilities where somebody can choose to go in, where there'll be, I don't know, individual cubicles, let's say.
and that
a
could be like a
unisex
mix.
bathroom.
So it'll be men,
Yes.
women, other.
Well,
And
just
whatever
unisex.
you want to
Just
sit under,
unisex.
you
We
can go
already
under.
we already have unisex bathrooms.
He, she, it.
I do actually know some people who identify as that.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, no, and worse. Literally,
I thought you were cool.
don't even get me started on the people who are like, I'm actually a fox.
Oh, the
we talked about
furries.
this-
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier, like animals, like
Yeah,
people
yeah.
think they're dogs or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, So I think I have no issue with there being a unisex bathroom as long as you also have a sex segregated space for women because they are sexually vulnerable. It's purely that.
If you are going to acknowledge one group of people, then the same level of acknowledgement should be given to another. I completely agree. It's not like, oh, these people are marginalized. We should give them all the attention. But what about normal people? Yeah. Which is kind of what social media is doing. It's overrepresenting marginalized and very small groups at the expense
But
of.
it's like you said, it's because of the drama. The drama gets clicks, it gets reactions, and it gets people talking, and then they'd rather promote the drama rather than actual conversation.
100%.
What I'm really concerned about is this in schools because schools are the right ground for social contagion, which is what a lot of this is. So in the same way that, self-harm has been a social contagion, eating disorder has been a social contagion, basically where there's some sort of psychological pathology which starts in one or a small number of children and teenagers, usually girls, but not exclusively because they have higher levels of negative emotion and they're more compliant, they're more they're more quick to conform. You'll start with one or a small number of people with this pathology, and then it will spread like a wildfire very quickly amongst usually the children who are girls and teenage girls. And that will lead to situations where you'll have a sudden burst of young women thinking that they're trans, and then a lot of them wanting to go into the male bathrooms. And that is a problem because the kind of least regulated, most aggressive stage in apart from toddlers, yes, I know that's a unique phenomenon, but after being a toddler, the most unregulated and most aggressive stage in a person's life is when they're a teenager for men, for boys. So if you get teenage boys and just girls who are girls who think that they're boys in bathrooms together, what do you think is going to happen?
Bad things.
Bad things. And this is
Not guaranteed, but there's a higher chance. Probability goes higher.
Not guaranteed, but that is a risk. And we just need to remember safeguarding. Like very simple safeguarding rules for young people is what I'm reading.
But it is interesting you bring that up because that is rarely brought up in sort of anti-trans discussions. Is that the majority of transitions are from biological girls to men. The other side is not as common. It's mostly women deciding to become men rather than the other way around, and that's not a subject that comes up very often.
I've not looked at the stats.
I find that really weird. And
It
I'm
is,
glad
yeah.
that you picked up on that because, like, it is true that the majority of people now are these young women who are transitioning to appear as men, and it's mainly these vulnerable young women who are going into male bathrooms, not the other way around.
Yeah, but it makes sense when you look at the feminine nature of being very susceptible to societal pressures. Like this is why advertising focuses on women so much, because they know that they can manipulate women into feeling bad about themselves, and then they sell them a product and say, "Hey, this will solve your negative emotions." So I think it makes sense as to why women would be transitioning.
Obviously, I can't posit a theory about this, but what I do know is that teenage girls, particularly when it comes to like social media, there's a lot of competition and pressure into appearing and behaving in a certain way. That again, I haven't been in that situation as a woman, but this idea of opting out. Becoming trans is one way of opting out. It's opting out of that social. It's like, you know what? Screw being a woman. Screw all these pressures. I'm just going to become a dude, and none of that's going to apply to me. And it's not hard to do. You know, going from female to male. Again, like it's like a bit of time in the weight room. You know, and like a bit of hormonal surgery, and you can't tell the difference. There are examples of men with vaginas. You like that is a dude. Like it's not a dude. That is not bald beard cigar. That is not a dude. So that transition is much simpler. But going the other way around, these shoulders aren't going to get any thinner. You know, this jaw is not going to get any smaller.
They shave the Adam's apple nowadays as well, don't
Yeah, they do surgery to shave it. Yeah, that's it. It's awful surgery that a guy has to go through.
But the thing with the female transition is bad as well, because I've seen
It's not nice. Yeah.
I've seen where they've cut open the forearm and then they've removed skin to then make a fake penis.
The phalloplasty. It's an absolutely horrific experimental surgery.
Yeah.
There are no established guidelines on a way to make a proper functional fake penis, basically.
The transition is different every time for each person. Yeah.
This is something which I think that people don't really know about, and it's a delicate issue, but I think it's important to talk about with this. And something I find really insidious about what's going on with the women in this is a lot of these young women are drawn into this through sexual manipulation online. And I'm not just talking about people who are groomed directly. That does happen. I have known people who an older adult has come in and convinced them by becoming their friend on social media that they are in fact trans for whatever reason, and it takes them down this dark path. But that's not the only thing that's going on. There's a strange phenomenon where particularly autistic young women, particularly socially isolated young women with mood disorders like depression and anxiety, take refuge on social media in the online world and in fiction and fantasy, and they will find themselves identifying a lot with male fictional characters to an obsessive degree. This is something that is more widespread than I think anybody, in the real world realizes. Because in these online communities, they're very, very sheltered. They're very, very closed off. So nobody really knows or cares. But for teenagers, this is a huge phenomenon. I happen to know this because I'm an artist, and a lot of these people are my clients. So I've seen it firsthand, and I kind of grew up with it. And it gets to the extent where people get so attached to this, and they'll identify so much with this. And to be blunt, there is a very large sexual aspect. There's a pornographic aspect, kind of in the same way that a lot of people are coming to realize that autogynephilia is a large driver for male transition.
Okay. That's a big word for me.
Right, we're going to need a little bit of background on that to make this point. In a nutshell, autogynephilia is a paraphilic sexual fetish whereby a man is aroused by the idea of himself as a woman. He is a man, he knows he's a man, he thinks he's a man, but the idea of him with boobs turns him on. And this is pretty much the only thing that can stimulate him. And a lot of the people who are transitioning are doing this not because of a felt sense of disalignment with their gender and their biology, but because they have autogynephilia. If you don't believe me, go look up interviews with autogynephiles. They will tell you themselves. Benjamin Boyce on YouTube is a great resource for this. Anyway,
It makes sense because when I was talking to him earlier, when I see trans women, typically they're dressed in a slutty way, and it's like that's not how women dress. That's how certain types of women dress. So for them, they want to feel sexy, or there's some kind of sexual kind of perversion or desire.
Of course, it's not everyone, and
No, of course. Yeah.
the point there being, which is something I really wish people would get into their heads, who for some reason this is a relevant topic, is that people who call themselves trans. It's not one homogenous category. It's different demographics with very different reasons. The autogynephiles are one thing, the people who have some sort of hormonal issue are one thing, you might call them the real trans. The young women with mood disorders and autism is one thing, who want to opt out of being sexualized and all that. And then there is this other group, which I don't think anybody's talking about, and they're going unrepresented and not helped, which is it's something like a female counterpart to the male autogynephiles. It's something like autoandrophilia, something like that, whereby I will see young women very attached to the idea of themselves as men sexually. They will get very almost obsessed with gay pornography, and then they will attach themselves and project onto these characters. I know because I'll see them write about it on social media. And then a lot of these people eventually start to transition. And I really have this inclination that they have this sexual motivation that they can only be fulfilled if they appear as a man. And here comes the really insidious part of this. I mean, if that wasn't insidious enough already, that once you go through that surgery, you lose sexual function and sensation completely. It's why this argument that this is about compassion is completely baseless. There is nothing compassionate about basically female genital mutilation.
Would you say the best way to give them compassion is to give them the treatment mentally that they need to be not brainwashed, or if they have this thing where they have to have boobs to feel sexual, it's some kind of mental thing, right? At that point.
Yes. For this demographic, absolutely, they need mental health treatment because this is nothing to do with being actually trans or a hormonal issue. It's a mental disorder. They need therapy. They don't need surgery. This is the case for the majority of the women. The men is a different case. There is a steady, small percentage of men who consistently present from childhood saying that I am, in fact, a woman. That is a different case with a different treatment. But for these women, the majority of them, they are going through mental struggle. They have mood disorders that is disrupting their internal sense of self. A lot of them are autistic. Autistic people have a struggle understanding the sense of self and holding categories unless they're extremely black and white, which is why a lot of autistic young women who happen to be more masculine think, oh, I must be a man, because the categories aren't clear enough. They need mental health help, they do not need surgery.
What happened to being just a tomboy?
Yes, exactly. It's this weird regressive notion that women can't be slightly masculine. It's so strange because you hear people preaching
Girls can be
about
tomboys, some men can be femboys.
Yes.
Yeah, but can I just add a slightly different dimension to this? So one of the things that you said actually caught my attention. It's that these people, some people need therapy. So I'm going to extrapolate that from just the trans issues, but generally speaking. And I just a question for everyone here. How many of you guys actually see a doctor before you try to Google your symptoms? I think most people, they turn to Google or to a search engine to try to understand their health situation before they ever actually get a chance to see a doctor, if you can get a chance to see a doctor. So the terrifying thing about Google and search engines and algorithms in general is that it will confirm your bias. It's not there to give you a reflection of the truth. So if you ask Google, do I have cancer? It's going to give you 500 reasons why you might have cancer. And in cases like of trans people, it's like, am I trans? Or like, ask those questions. You're going to get much more confirmation. And it doesn't just apply to transgenderism. Think about it this way. Think of right-wing radicalization. YouTube, by accident, was radicalizing young men because you just click on one video, it's going to recommend another video like it, and another video like it, and it's going to get more and more and more extreme. Suddenly you have a guy who is pretty mild-mannered with some right-wing views becoming the Christchurch shooter. You know what I mean? Like, and that is not through any deliberate action on the part of YouTube or the algorithm. The algorithm is just giving you what you want. So if someone wants to be trans and they don't have access to healthcare or a doctor or therapy, he's going to keep being fed content that confirms their biases. So so thanks for bringing that up. Anyway, that's my point.
No, I think that's a really important point. I think a lot of these issues have to do with exactly what you raised. And I think the solution is, at least a partial solution is clear, which is change the incentive model for the social media platforms.
100%.
So instead of having an advertiser model, have something like a subscription model. It's because in an advertiser model, it's driven by having your attention on there for the longest time possible, and they're going to do that with these recommendation algorithms. Instead, you could completely change the model. You could have something where you have to pay up front, and that will switch the incentives around completely. You can then go for quality over quantity. You can give people what they actually would benefit from seeing for their well-being. Like, it's not like we're trapped within this like inescapable godlike algorithm and like, no, we could totally just, if there was enough of a pressure and a desire to do it, we could change the incentive structure.
And I also think better access to healthcare, because most people in the UK can't even get to their GP anymore. So just better access to healthcare could probably help. You don't have to Google everything.
Although I do think there is a role for that. But
100%.
At the moment, it is.
How you doing?
Fraught with danger. Okay, I actually have to go now, but that's finished.
Thank you very much. What was your name again?
Sophia.
Are you going to be around?
Huh?
Are you going to be around today?
Not today, unfortunately.
You just walk you through.
Yeah, basically.
All right, let's catch up later, okay?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, thanks for dropping some bombs for the chat.
Where
Take
are you
it.
posting this, by the way?
Sorry?
Where are you posting this?
YouTube.
Channel?
The Man's Golden Dragon. So it's all one word. Delta Alpha Mike. Alpha November.
You're right.
Sugar.
Yeah, can't complain.
Golden Dragon. All one word.
Oh, no, we're just having a discussion. I don't think there's any debate. You're looking well,
Dragon,
brother.
Was it Dragon?
Am I? Thank you.
That's a bad joke. Take it.
Yeah, I've got a... Yeah, I can count them on one hand. So, yeah.
That was perfect. That was really good to have the female perspective on the
100%.
situation.
And you'll notice it's not radically different from what we were talking about. So it's good to hear.
Oh, so the men are getting it right. The men are getting it right
We're
for women.
We're in the right ballpark. Yeah.
Cool. Let's go back to religion.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh no, we can go politics if you
No,
like.
no.
What's your speciality?
You're the one driving the show, not me.
We're driving the show.
All right.
We're both in the driver's seat. Sometimes I might pull left, sometimes I'll pull right. Depends
So,
on.
so I'm not a subject matter expert on religion. Like, if someone was to ask me about, like, what do you think of Christianity, Islam, etc., I can talk from a historical perspective and some things that I've personally experienced, but those are largely anecdotal. I don't like again. I've had good and bad experiences with Muslims. I've had good and bad experiences with Christians. I've had good and bad experiences with Jewish people. So, is it right for me to judge someone's religion
Based on those few?
Based on, it's like, of course not.
No.
You know,
But
so-
it's good to have anecdotal stories from people because it forms what you have experienced,
100%.
how you've formed certain perspectives that you have.
100%.
So, out of curiosity, then, why did you not go down Islam? Why did you not go down that route personally? Is it just because of the God aspect, or was it?
No. I'll put it to you this way. My family were not especially religious, even though both my grandparents are like literally sheikhs from Al Azhar
No way.
University. But we were not particularly religious. And and again, when I was a kid, like we weren't hammered into being religious, but I found myself behaving in a specific way. And the way I was behaving, everyone was like, "MashaAllah, Mustafa's such a good boy," blah 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 blah. And I was not channeling religion into any of my actions. And then, like, I found out, like, okay, I'm not convinced of the whole God story. My behavior didn't change. You see what I mean? It's not like I said, no, I'm no longer Muslim, and suddenly I'm whoring, drinking, doing drugs. It's like, no, it's just my essential nature, as imperfect as it is, didn't change whether or not I put God in the picture. And the thing that terrified me was not the edicts or the spiritual aspect of Islam, but the thing that scared me was Muslims trying to claim that the Quran was some kind of scientific textbook.
Okay, yes.
That's the thing that terrifies me. It's like, bro, it's not a science book. It's like, you're not going to take like the Quran into CERN and figure out, like, no, the Large Hadron Collider. Oh, let's look at Surah 23rd. Like, that's not what it's there for.
No.
You know, like, and suddenly people were trying to come up with, no, the Quran is an moral objectivist. It's like, I'm sorry, what? And that's the thing that put me off. It's like, if you're going to tell me about, no, it's a book that is there to guide you as a human being to become more decent, to focus, to be outside of yourself, to take care of your parents, to perform charitable works, you know, like
That would make sense.
where did all that go?
Yeah.
And then it became, no, the Quran is the literal, objective word of truth, and oh, you should go and kill these people.
Yeah.
That's what it became in the Middle East. It's like, I'm not having any of that. I'm out.
So that's where you say that it was being used for bad.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I've got a similar reservation with Muslims when it comes to the Quran as well, because I think they make outlandish claims that they want to sell the book, but it doesn't actually sell it for what it actually is. It's things that they're attributing to it.
So I'm finding that this is not unique to Muslims.
No, it's definitely not.
I'll give you one example, like this whole idea of Ayurvedic or ancient Indian science.
Okay.
There's a lot of there's a lot of Hindu mysticism finding its way with medical and scientific language. China are trying to promote traditional Chinese medicine as an alternative to, like, so-called Western medicine, etc. And definitely Judaism. They're also trying to impose Judeo-numerology and the Kabbalah as if it was a scientific technique. So again, you're going to find a lot of these ancient mystical ideas trying to, oh no, the Chinese had the I Ching, and then, like, the I Ching, you would throw straws and then come up with, like, a hectogram, and then, like, oh, you use the hectogram to guide your life. This is the positive. It's like,
Yeah.
it's that same mindset of trying to,
Sorry, I thought Ayurvedic was quite different to just mysticism. I thought it was actually like using like turmeric for certain things, which
yes,
has health benefits.
But the basis of that, so it's not devoid of health benefits, but at the same time, to claim that the Ayurvedic sciences come from, like, a detailed scientific study, is not true.
Okay.
It
okay.
is
Science is the testing
yes.
and the. Okay.
And the same with traditional Chinese medicine. Like, yeah, if you take a ginseng root before you go to sleep,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're gonna get a good night's sleep. But then, like, maybe you won't get a good night's sleep. Maybe it'll have no effect at all. The basis for like, oh, you should eat like seal, the foreskin of a seal, and and have that dried in soup to cure your influenza.
Yeah, that's a bit.
Again, you know what I mean? It's like, can you please give me a scientific basis? No, there is no scientific basis.
So how about acupuncture? Because acupuncture, I would say they would have had to done through trial and error, and I would essentially say,
So acupuncture is actually very interesting because you are correct. It doesn't have a scientific basis, but it does come from a bit of practical basis where you can make certain predictions. But the power of a scientific study is in its capacity to predict an outcome. And acupuncture doesn't always work. It works in some cases and works in others. So is it perfect? No, it isn't. But there are benefits. I'll give you another example. Like think of like what's called touch therapy or massage therapy.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people's health improves significantly with touch therapy. Other people doesn't. But you can't use touch therapy as a scientific basis because it hasn't been studied scientifically. I'm pretty sure there are some people like, no, if we do this, what's the outcome? Can we do a study? Well, you're talking very early basis, but just because we have anecdotal evidence that some people get better and others don't, does not make it a scientific, like a scientific theory or a scientific thing.
no, but I was saying more of the side of they would have used the scientific method in the trial and error situation.
No.
Is that not a scientific method?
No, it's not. No, again, when we say scientific method, you're talking about a very specific methodology that was developed 200-300 years ago.
Yes, but the actual method, as in this is what the method is. But I'm saying people have been doing trial and error, testing things and trying something else and seeing if they get replicatable results for a very long time.
Well,
Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are today.
not quite. I'll tell you why.
Yeah, sure.
So you can go back to ancient Greece. Have you ever heard of someone named Sextus Empiricus?
No, I don't believe I have.
So he was an ancient Greek philosopher who was talking about primarily. So he was one of like the first early scientists, like the early days of like Aristotle had this idea of scientific that something needs to be demonstrable to be scientific. Sextus Empiricus went an extra step, and he was talking about no, you need to have it empirical evidence. Like okay, you can't say that eating more oregano makes you better. I need to see many examples of someone getting better by eating oregano. So so empiricism was literally the earliest stage of sort of scientific achievement. It's like you can't say that like no, you pray to the gods and you will automatically, because that's a belief. That's not like met with like actual empirical evidence. But you had guys like Galen, guys like Epictetus of Alexandria, who were like no, they were looking for empirical evidence to validate whether something or not is correct. But that's where things started to get interesting, because people would look at the work of Galen like years after, and turns out he was wrong about it. Most of the things he did.
Oh, was he?
It's like even though he started with like empirical evidence, he was extrapolating a lot because again, our senses and our capacity to understand the world purely through senses is at best limited, and unless you apply a certain kind of rigor, so that's where the idea of falsifiability came in. Falsifiability, that was developed by Karl Popper. That came well into the 20th century.
So, was that false?
Falsifiability.
That's basically
This idea of positing your hypothesis in a way that can be disproven.
perfect.
So-
Rather
so-
than trying to affirm it with
Exactly. So prior to Karl Popper writing about that in the 1960s, it was called, what was it? It was verificationism, positive. I can't remember the exact term, but it was under the terms that Albert Einstein and the early quantum physicists did, was looking to validate their findings. Einstein went an extra step. He was putting himself in a position of risk where if he was proven wrong, that whole theory gets thrown out the window. But then he got proven right. Boom, yeah, I can't really fault what this guy's doing. So this was pure 20th century.
Okay.
And even now, falsifiability is not seen as the perfect standard. There are actually newer standards that came up. Like we're talking like, so now there's more skepticism in the output of science than there was historically. So if you talk to like mathematicians and physicists like Peter Payne-Bassi and whatnot, their position on science is that science is slowly becoming almost like a religious authority in the eyes of people. And just because something is discovered scientifically, it should not be an authoritative claim. So there is this idea of no, now we have to question it because it's sounding authoritative.
Yes, yeah, no,
You
no,
see what
I
I
agree.
mean?
Yeah, I
But
think this was a big issue during
that's,
COVID.
that's a huge issue.
Yeah.
But you're talking 20th century. We're talking like in our okay, I wasn't alive in the 60s, but definitely your parents were.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? But again, traditional Chinese medicine didn't have any of that. It's just like okay, we see this to be working with these people, but then they've never counted the cases where it didn't work or the subject died because of again severe limitations, and no one would question the findings because the guy doing it was a very intelligent practitioner, for example. So science has evolved.
So I think the example I had in my head was more of like they found like I think the needles in ancient Egypt which were used for cataract surgery.
Yes.
So for me that shows they understood what cataracts was. They
Yes.
understood what could solve the problem.
Yeah.
And this wasn't something that they just did once. It was something that they were
They
doing.
did repeatedly. Yeah, 100%.
So that to me would be.
And I can second that. If you look at any ancient surgeon's tools, a modern doctor would recognize those tools straight away. But surgery is interesting because, like, let's be completely honest here. Aside from the sophistication of the tools, surgery hasn't really changed in 500-600 years.
Cut here,
You're cutting people
remove
open.
this.
You're doing this. Yeah, now we're doing it with anesthetic. Now you're doing like you have to wash your hands, and clean everything. Our understanding has improved, but the basic tenets of surgery are more or less the same. Whereas our understanding of biology has improved quite considerably, so you don't need to do as much surgery as before. Now surgery is only done in very
They used to do stupid stuff like bloodletting, where they just drain blood for getting rid of the bad blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have examples of like Paleolithic people, like skulls with holes bored into them.
Yes, I've seen. Yeah.
And that's the thing. You can tell that this borehole was not an injury, and that the skull actually there was healing. So that meant that they bored a hole in this person's skull, and he lived after that. So there are examples of human beings doing surgery. But here's the example you're not looking at. How many of those surgeries happened and the guy died, or that surgery wasn't necessary?
I wouldn't be able to know because we don't
Exactly.
know numbers. But this is why I'm not saying that it was completely scientific and we had everything right. But I would say that they were somewhat using some kind of scientific method to get to where they got to.
Yeah, we had proto-scientific ways of doing like to claim that it is 100% not scientific. Like no, this is why we value people like Huygens and Ptolemy and yeah, they got things wrong. And like even Darwin didn't know about DNA. Darwin didn't know about hereditary features, but we still value because like they have forwarded human knowledge. But to claim that it is scientific compared to our modern understanding of science, that is not an accurate claim.
No, for sure.
There was some rigor, but is it like the same level of rigor as hell? Even the rigor we have today is imperfect. So this is even less. so what are we?
As you said, it
arguing
becomes some kind of authoritative thing,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
how much do you trust that authority?
100%.
Yeah.
I love to remember, particularly in medicine, people tend to overvalue the opinion of doctors, and here's why. So my parents are doctors, right? I'm not saying they were liars.
Sheikhs and doctors. Wow.
Yeah,
what happened to you?
Yeah. I played computer games and got addicted. I became a programmer.
That's probably what happened with me as well.
Yeah.
I love computer games.
So here's the interesting thing: the practice of medicine is different from medical research.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the GP or the anesthesiologist, or whatever, they are a specialist who takes the science ready-made and they apply it in the field.
Correct.
Whereas someone doing scientific research might never see a patient. You know, they're going to get the data, they're going to get the samples, they're going to get that's a very different thing. So the doctors are like consumers. I'll put it to you this way: if a physicist develops new materials, the architect takes the properties of the materials and puts up a building, but he's not the guy who researched the materials. So those are two different lines of thinking. So we take the word of doctors as an authority as if it is scientific, when the reality of the fact that a doctor is a applied practitioner.
Or parrot. He's just repeating what he's been told by the people who've done the research.
And in defense of doctors, they have a lot of limitations imposed on them because, again, the doctor does not want to get themselves in trouble or hurt the patient. So why are they going to take a risk? They're going to take, no, this is the established science. I'm going to go with it because, like, what if something happens? What if the patient dies? I'm not going to take a risk with these people's lives. You know, it's like I'm going to work with what we know. If they're going to be, like, doing experiments, you know, that's not something most doctors do. If you're talking about a research scientist with a control group, etc., that's a very different setup.
Very, very different. Yeah. I don't know how we came onto the science thing. I'll have to rewatch this,
Well,
but
we started with the Quran and like religious texts,
Oh, and how
that's being used as like in
correct.
science. But a question I love to ask religious people is like, okay, let me take your like whether it's the Bible or the Talmud or whatever. Let's say we have a scientific theory, and we take it to the lab, and the theory fails. What do we do with the theory? You throw it out.
What do you tweak it?
You tweak it, or you change it, whatever. But if it completely fails, like the most basic,
then you throw it out.
You throw it out. You change it or you throw it out. But then we do the same with the Quran and the Bible. Would you accept throwing it out after finding that it has failed in laboratory experiments? Most of them won't.
What kind of laboratory experiment could you do?
Exactly. Well, I'll give you one. So the Quran talks about how mountains are there to cement the earth.
Okay.
Okay, the mountains are the nails that holds the earth down or whatever.
Okay.
All right? But we didn't know about tectonic plates until the 20th century. We didn't really understand what a tectonic plate was. And we also figured out that most mountain ranges are the points where the tectonic plates collide and they crunch, like, like a car when two cars, they crunch into each other. So mountains are the point where tectonic plates collide into each other.
Go up. Yeah.
All right? So is it a nail that's holding the earth together? Or is it a different, like, what are we talking about all of a sudden? Can I take this text and use it predictively to figure out, like, this is what, the Quran predicted that, no, they're mountains. Like, you didn't mention tectonic plates. You didn't mention the fact that the earth is literally floating on a sea of lava.
But, I'm not Muslim, but I have to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can understand that these kind of books come with a certain style of language where it's more descriptive and certain things. And if I was to build something, say if I had two pieces of wood together, and I put a third piece of wood on top of them, and I nailed them down, where would I be doing that? It's where they meet.
Where they meet, yeah.
So if you were to take that example as the tectonic plates meet, and where the mountains are is where they are sewn together, or they're seamed together, or they're hammered down as nails. Metaphorically, you could see that, it does make some sense as to...
Sure, but then we'd fall back to the interpretation aspect.
Correct,
You
yes.
see what
It
I mean?
depends on who's interpreting it and what they're taking it from.
And we're falling back again onto the exact thing that Karl Popper did when he wrote about falsifiability. So Karl Popper was comparing Albert Einstein to Sigmund Freud, right? And Sigmund Freud, agree or disagree with him, he was like one of the leading authorities in psychoanalysis. Now, Karl Popper's conceit was as follows. Albert Einstein created a situation where the theory was well defined, the outcomes of the theory were either right or wrong and measurable, and if it was wrong, he was going to abandon his theory. So the fact that light has mass. So basically, like, no, everyone was like, this is crazy. How can light have mass? And then he proved using an eclipse that light actually goes around the moon, and it was going to hit us in a specific position. And here is the evidence, etc., etc. Then you take someone like Sigmund Freud. You can reinterpret Sigmund Freud's ideas to fit any number of different contexts, but you can't use Sigmund Freud's theory to predict a particular context. So if I take Sigmund Freud today and like, okay, I think this person has mother issues, on the pretext of this, and I find out, no, she just has a gimp leg because she fell when she was a child, then that should mean the theory lacks predictive capability. So again, if we have to sit and interpret, no, the language is open to interpretation, sure, you can do that in good faith, but then you're also like, but that's you interpreting positively.
Yeah, but then it's also predictive as well, because essentially if we were to take that text as the way I've interpreted it, it would essentially say, wherever two tectonic plates meet, there's always mountains.
Yes.
And if we find that to be true, then we could go, okay.
But that's what you're bringing into it. You see where I'm coming from? If you were to look at the text independent of what is right or wrong, nailing the earth. You see what I mean? Not, it could mean, it might mean. You see where I'm coming from?
No, I understand where you're coming from, but the fact that it talks about mountains, nails, meaning something that kind of a way to stick two things together. So land, stick two things together, mountains. It's not, I'm not going to say it's very generous of me to say that interpretation is possibly talking about how mountains are formed.
You don't have to interpret much. But at the same time, you still have to interpret. You still
Correct,
have to put a piece
correct.
of yourself
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, yeah.
And again, we do have examples of mountain ranges splitting up.
Do we?
Yes. So
I've
if you
never-
think about Africa and South America, you notice that they fit perfectly, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So there was a point in history where the two continents were literally
Joined up,
smack
yeah,
up, boom. You see what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Pangaea,
Pangaea,
Pangaea. That entire thing just got completely split up and then rejoined in different parts. So again, it's like, what's the point of nailing something down if you're just going to take it apart again? You see where I'm
Sometimes you
coming from?
rebuild. Sometimes you recycle. You build a wardrobe. You don't need the wardrobe anymore, and you
That's
build a bed.
but that's again, we're
Yeah.
interpreting again.
Yeah,
We're
yes,
interpreting
yes.
again. So yes, you could, in good faith, say that yes, it can be interpreted in that way, and that's an accurate statement. But to claim that it is an authoritative scientific treatise
Oh,
of
yeah,
the fact that
that is
there are
completely different.
tectonic plates, and you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Those are
completely
not.
different.
That's not
No.
saying the same thing.
No,
You
no.
see what I mean? Like, even if I was to say, like, you know what, maybe those guys had an interesting interpretation. That's like, yeah, that's an interesting interpretation. But is it like, no, this is what it said? No, it isn't.
No,
You see
for
where I'm
sure.
coming from?
No, for sure. But I think, obviously, I've got a bias because I'm not Muslim, but I believe in God, and I don't believe God will give us just random bits of information without some kind of hidden meaning to it. And the way I see it is like Jesus. One of the things he said is, "Let those who have ears hear, and those who have eyes see." So he's saying that some people who have got this level of understanding will only get this out of the text.
Yeah.
And those people who've got this understanding will get this out of the text. So two people could read the same text and get different interpretations.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that one is wrong and the other one is right. It just means that there's layers to this. As we gain a better understanding, a better wisdom, a better knowledge of the world around us, we can then ascend our understanding, if that makes sense.
I don't have an issue with that. It's like, again, society moves at the pace of the slowest at the end of the day, whether it's religion or something else. And like, yes, if you want to have a successful religious edict or successful religious rule, it has to be understood by the dumbest as well as the smartest. Yes. But then my problem with that is, like, what if the dumbest and the smartest are seeing things very differently? So like, one of the smart, like, I'll give you an interesting example. It's like, we were talking about an interesting argument I was hearing the other day. Like, okay, if you had Muslims on Mars, what direction would they pray to? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like an intelligent person would say, like, it is irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. You're on a different planet. What direction you pray to, we'll just pick one. There's going to be an idiot saying somewhere, it's like, no, this is haram.
You
know what I mean?
upwards.
It's like,
yeah.
it's like this is haram. We will just,
Or
like,
this particular star
yeah.
sign you need to pray towards.
And if you speak to a Christian priest, I've spoken to many Christian priests. I was always surprised by how open they are about the issues in their religion. You know, it's like you speak to, like, particularly here in England, if you speak to an Anglican priest, the Anglicans are always like, yeah, this doesn't always make sense in a modern understanding, but we try to be like open about it, or we try to understand. Yeah, it's not always like, what do you think? You know, they would change the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's having a sensible conversation and understanding where your faith works and where it doesn't.
Where your
in a modern
understanding
context.
is and everything, yeah.
But I wish everyone was that open-minded. You know what I mean? It's like, no, God said this, therefore it is that. You know what I mean? And then, like, that's the level of discussion. Suddenly, the intelligent people, or the people who are, like, willing to look at multiple layers of the faith, yeah, you can't have an argument with someone like that. It's like, mister, you've done messed up. You know? Like, that's not someone you can have a conversation with.
No.
And it's all of a sudden, and this is where things get interesting. That's where the idiocracy effect comes in.
That means
Idiocracy. There are, like, a large number of stupid people behaving in a certain way. All of a sudden, you're like, crap, I can't really do anything that's different from the very large number of stupid people. It's like if everyone is like, yeah, let's all throw rocks. Why aren't you throwing rocks? Because it's stupid. And then you're the one who gets rocks thrown at you. So you're just gonna have to kowtow to the majority.
That's the old saying. If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
I don't agree with it.
I don't either.
I'd rather die fighting, but I think, there is some truth to that. Where those people who don't want to die fighting will end up just joining the crowd.
Won't or can't or think it's meaningless.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's again, it's like if you're going to get into a fight with every idiot you meet, you're never going to sleep.
Sometimes you got to know where to just go. Yeah, let's walk away.
Yeah.
You believe what you believe. I believe what I believe, and it's all good.
But religion in particular, and I've seen this and you see this with Muslims, you see this with Christians, you see this with Jews. It's like you have some people who are like open and like, yeah, I get it. I get that it's not perfect, but you know what? I'm gonna go with it anyway. But then you've got like, no, this is the literal word of God. It is the truth. It is this way or nothing. And it's like, whoa, easy, brother. You know, like and yeah.
It's like that. I was gonna do the meme. The meme is, brother, what is that?
Yeah, Drake.
Yeah, the Drake meme.
The Drake meme.
Oh, sorry again, buddy. Sorry. Cool, awesome. So
how long are we going now? It's like
yeah, we've been going a while. I'm just
All right.
about to wrap it up
Yeah.
because I do appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.
One last question I wanted to ask you just before we wrap it up. Since we've been on the topic of God,
Yeah.
is there any kind of particular type of evidence that because you said you're agnostic atheist,
Yeah.
is there any particular type of evidence that you'd be open to, or are you very specific on what you would need from God as evidence to believe?
That's a good question. I'll be totally honest with you. I'm not 100% sure. The only thing that I think is testable is to prove the existence of something called a soul.
Okay.
That would be a very powerful indication that there may be more to our understanding, because like science at the end of the day is not infallible, and we're at the end of the day looking at physics, biology, and chemistry. We're looking at the material world. So if a soul exists, there has to be an interface between this spiritual dimension that God exists in and the material world. And if we can find this interface, and we're talking like a legitimate, then that proves that there may be more, that humans are not just meat robots. There is this mystical, unidentifiable thing that we have just started to detect. Then I would be much more open to the idea. But at the moment, because again, the word agnosticism.
But it'd have to be using a scientific study.
Yes, because again, like, look, if you're saying like if it's interfacing with the material world, you know, then yes, it's going to have physics, it's going to have biology, it's touching it. You know what I mean? Like you can measure something. Like, okay, people lose weight when they die. Yes, because of all the chemistry and the gases that stops. Obviously, you're going to lose weight.
Yes.
So that's not the weight of the soul. Or we can measure the weight of the soul.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
That doesn't make sense.
I think that kind of stuff misleads from actually trying to find truth. And
Yes. And another aspect, and this is the question that I love asking people who are very religious. Let's say we can prove it materialistically. Will it continue to remain sacred?
That's a very good question. I personally think it would.
So that's the question. If like the classic scenario is like, imagine for a second that a fairy or comes out of a tree, you know what I mean, and this fairy comes to you, and then suddenly you start measuring the fairy's weight, and like it's physics, it's chemistry, it's like it's no longer a mystical creature. It's like literally something you can weigh and measure, and so suddenly the mysticism of the fairies and the dryads and the spirits or whatever, it's no longer a mystical thing. It's a physical thing now that is falling under the rules of physics and chemistry and biology.
So if God came down and said to you, "Hey, I'm God," you'd be
high
like,
five. You know, like
you'd be like, "No, I can't believe that you're."
No, not quite.
Oh, okay.
Not quite.
Sorry,
No,
so
that's
maybe
not
I
my question.
misunderstood it.
No, that's not my question. My question is, if that happens, would you still consider it to be God? Would a religious person still, because suddenly the mystical element, because a large part of what makes something sacred is the fact that it is untouchable, that it is like mind-bogglingly difficult to understand. But what if this dude comes up, materializes in front of you,
AKA Jesus.
you know, like, yeah, pretty much, like yeah, with his man bun, and like I love everybody, man, you know, like
Peace, love.
you know, peace, love, high five, you know, and then like, and I can tell you about the future and the past, but it's just a dude. You know what I mean? I'm willing to bet that a percentage of Christians would be turned away from the faith instantly, and another percentage would be fanatical about this human being, and another percentage is like, this man, this is false, this is the Antichrist. It's going to create a whole. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
So that's the interesting dimension. Is like, will it continue to be sacred even if we prove it scientifically? And what are the effects?
Yeah, for me personally, I would think that yes, it's still sacred because it's something that's beyond the physical, manifesting this into the physical.
Yeah.
So for me, I'd understand it in that regard. But I'm sure there's some people out there who would end up going, I don't know.
It would change the dynamics of what makes the Christian faith work. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You wouldn't cease to be Christian, but you would be something else that arose from Christianity in the same way Christianity arose from Judaism.
So what if you had a personal experience? So if you were maybe sitting there watching TV and all of a sudden a figure appeared to you and said that, not physical figure, like a spiritual figure, would you then go, okay, maybe I've been wrong? Or would you think,
I have no idea. I mean, you're asking me a hypothetical.
Yeah, completely
I'll
hypothetical.
put it to you this way: if
Yeah.
it was like a super vivid experience,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not the perfect human. Of course, I would be like, whoa, this is maybe. I'm like, and
yeah,
that's-
but you'd always question it. Like
Yes.
even me, I'd question things like,
and again,
was that in my head? Was that a dream? Was that
and
whatever?
a part of the fact of being an agnostic is the implicit admission that I could be wrong. Like people say agnostic means you don't know. No, agnostic means that I know what I'm saying could be wrong, but I am placing my bet. It's like I'm not a
With
betting
the
man.
information we have at the
Yes,
moment.
I'm not a betting
Yeah.
man, but the closest analogy would be like the roulette wheel. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking math. So have you ever been to Vegas or to a
Yeah,
casino?
yeah.
We've all been to
Unfortunately.
Vegas. Yeah. Don't go to Vegas.
Yeah, it's bad.
Not fun.
Not even once.
Yeah, and the food. Oh. Anyway, the roulette wheel works as follows. You can place a bet on red or black, the two
Right.
colors, or your bet on a specific number.
0 to 36.
I think it was 0 to 36. So if you're betting on a specific number, you have to have a very high degree of confidence. The probability of landing on this number is very low. Whereas my bet is much more general. I'm betting on red or
Red or
black.
black, yeah.
See, I'm putting it on black.
Yeah.
Could I be wrong? Of course I could be wrong. It could land on red.
Yes.
100%.
But you're open to that being wrong.
Yes, I'm open to being incorrect.
Yeah.
And the shocking thing is you speak to learned people, they're like, what is more shocking? Discovering conclusively that God does not exist or that God does exist? It's going to shock everybody. Everyone's like, whoa, wait a minute. You see,
Either way, yeah.
yes, it is going to like it doesn't matter if you're an atheist or what you believe in. It's like you can prove conclusively X. It's like, that's going to change a lot.
There'll be ripples around the world.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah. So let's see
Amazing.
how it goes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This is Mustafa, a regular at Speaker's Corner. Thank you so much for your time. I
Very
really
much
appreciate
obliged.
it.
I enjoyed the
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
dude.
It wasn't so bad, was it?
No, not at all.